Hamalach hagoel osi mikora, yivarech es haneyarim, yikarev ahem shemim. B'shem avosai, b'shem avosai, Avraham v'Yitzchak, Yigul Arov, Erev Haaretz. B'shem Mimosai, Zara Rivka Rachel Leah, Yigul Arov, Kerev Haaretz.
Good Shabbos, good Shabbos, good morning. Wow, it's so wonderful to see everybody. Chazan Basia, thank you so much. Right into the, I feel like I almost don't want to say anything or just live in the Torah. That sound captures so much of what this week is about. So, good morning, everybody. I'm just taking a second to look at all these images of divinity flowing through the pixels. Good morning. So I'm Ben. If we haven't met, or if you've only experienced me maybe singing, we'll be learning Torah together this morning. So I want to just jump in quickly. Let's take a moment to ground in the gift of our tradition, inviting us to weave this wisdom into our lives. So I don't know if we have actually a slide or something with the blessing on it, but I'll just lead us quickly. And so everyone just take a moment. You can even close your eyes and just feel your body preparing. Allow your mind to center and to begin already to soak in these words of Torah. So Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We're so grateful this morning to have everybody with us. We are enthusiastically anticipating all of the Torah that is coming into the world this Shabbos, all over the world, but especially in this Zoom room. Good morning. Okay, so I'm gonna screen share our source sheet for this morning. I'll just say, actually, before I dive in, I'll just say this, just to locate us in the Torah. So we are actually finishing the book of Genesis this morning. So for those of you who've been following along, critical transition point in our narrative and in the development of this story that really holds so much of the spiritual development of Jewish tradition. This is the week where a couple of really critical endings are going to take place. Jacob and Joseph are both pass away during this section of the Torah. And there's this sort of heavy sense of the impending, what is this going to be in Egypt? You know, the family, all these tribes just relocated to Egypt from the land of Israel, from the land of Canaan. And of course, they haven't, we don't know yet about slavery, but there is this feeling of exile and this sense of uncertainty and a really heavy sense that when things come to an end, when this book of Genesis comes to an end, and when these lives come to an end and these eras come to an end, there's a very powerful way that something also is beginning, and we don't know what it is. And that mystery is, I think, so much, so appropriate for us as we stand on this precipice between 2020 and 2021 together and take a little Shabbat to just feel that just to bask in the mystery together. So that's so the Torah, I'll just share. So the Torah actually communicates that feeling in a very direct and yet very subtle way. So I'm going to enter full screen here, and can everybody see that? Everybody on the source sheet? All good? Everybody, any thumbs up? Can I see a thumbs up? Everybody see the source sheet? Okay, great. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So this image that you see on the top of your screen of the actual scribal image that is in a Sefer Torah, that's on the actual parchment that we read, this is actually the beginning of the Parsha, but you'll notice, if you can see my mouse, so the previous Parsha is still going, and we don't actually get to our Parsha until this word, Vayechi, right here. So Vayechi meaning lived. So Vayechi Yaakov, and Jacob lived, and it says Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. That's how we begin. The Parsha of Jacob's death begins with Jacob living. That's the first thing I want us to notice. But the really critical piece physically to zero in on is that this is the only Parsha in the Torah where there's actually no extra space between the previous Parsha and our Parsha. There's nothing really in the way that it's written traditionally to suggest that there's any breakage between one Parsha and the next. And if we had more of the image, you'd see that, when the chapter ends, there's actually the end of a paragraph, there's a space. But here, this is how it begins. And it's completely liminal. It's the transition is only if you know it, only if you notice it. And the way the tradition actually describes this is that the Parsha is closed. That's the terminology. Satum is the word in Hebrew. The Parsha is stuma, it is closed. And meaning that there's any space that would normally be made available scribally is completely gone. It's totally closed, and we just go from one word and one Parsha to the next. So as we're sort of settling into this theme of closing, of endings, we're going to try to, I hope today, this morning, to just sort of tease apart a little bit what is going on with this form of closing. What kind of closure is being afforded us with just even the way that the Torah organizes the words on the parchment? So could I get a volunteer, first of all, to just, we're actually going, if you want, you can just take a second to take in these first couple of verses, but actually the critical pieces where if someone wants to read is the Rashi on Genesis 47:28. So I'll just read quickly these opening verses for us, and then I'd love to have a volunteer give you a few seconds to, if you want to raise your hand in the participants tab for reading the Rashi. So these are the opening words of our Parsha, Genesis 47, verses 28 and 29. And Jacob lived, as we saw, Vayechi Yaakov, Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. 17 years he lived there, and that added up in the end, his whole life, all the days of Jacob's life, came to 147 years. And the Torah actually says the years, Shnei Chayav, which actually almost sounds kind of like Shnei, like Shnayim, like two lives, but it's really Shanim, the years of his lives. Sheva Shanim, 7 years. Arba'im u'me'at shanim, 140 years. So 147 altogether, with the last 17 in Egypt. And when the time approached for Israel to die, the person to die, he summoned his son Joseph and said to him, please do not bury me here in Egypt. Please take me back to the land of my ancestors, as I'm going to be gathered to my kin. So that's where we begin. Vayechi, Jacob lived, and in the next verse, preparing for death. So these already, this sense of ending and beginning is really with us. And again, we see what kind of an ending is it that, or what kind of a beginning is it that isn't even really marked visually, and that actually begins with the word lived. So what does Rashi say? Anybody? I actually can't see if there are hands up. Let's see. Miriam, go for it. I'll ask you to unmute.
I'll do it.
Good Shabbos. Boker Tov.
Shabbat Shalom, Boker Tov. So we have here Rashi. Vayechi Yaakov, Lama Parsha Zo Stuma. Why is this section Parsha closed? Lefi shekevan sheniftar Yaakov Avinu nistamu einehem velibam shel Yisrael mitzartabt hashiabud shehit chilu לשעבדם דבר אחר שביקש לגלות את הקץ הקץ לבניו ונסתם ממנו.
Awesome. Beautiful reading. So I'll take the English. So the easy part. So Rashi, the 11th century ish commentator, medieval commentator, is basically asking this question of why actually this parsha begins in this way. Why is it stuma? Why is it closed? Why isn't there any scribal indication that we're moving from one parsha to the next? He gives two answers. One, as soon as Jacob passed away, the eyes and hearts of Israel were closed, were nistamu, just like the parsha is stuma. And it says from mitzarat hasheibud shehitchilu leshabdam. So they were closed. They were closed from the tragedy or the distress of the enslavement that basically started when Jacob died. That's the suggestion, that as Jacob was dying, already the enslavement in Egypt was basically beginning. This sense of exile was really starting to settle in, and the sense of the tragedy of it and the distress of it caused their eyes and their hearts to close. Or maybe another way to read it is actually that, in a strange way, why is the parsha closed? Why does there need to be some concealment here? Because if these characters would know what we know, that they were about to be enslaved, right, it would be too much. So their eyes and their hearts are closed from being able to see that they are about to be enslaved, right? There's some grace actually in the concealment potentially, That's a creative reading. Another reason, this is what we're going to focus on a little more. So as Miriam beautifully read, Shebikesh legalot et haketz levanav v'nistam mimenu. There was a different reason. It was that Jacob wished to reveal the end to his sons. The end, and it was closed from him. So this symbolic beginning of the parsha being completely closed is somehow supposed to embody in the text exactly what happened, that Jacob was dying and he wanted to actually reveal. We don't know what this means. Haketz. Does it mean what happens maybe when a person passes away? Is it that he wants to reveal, what's going to happen, that there's going to be this really difficult, centuries of slavery, but then something else amazing is going to happen? Is it, or maybe something much deeper in the future, maybe something like a messianic age, really the end of days? We're here at the end of the book of Genesis, and Jacob wants to legalot, which is this to reveal, which is actually the same word, the same letters as galut, as exile. He wants to reveal something. There's almost like a Freudian way that the truth is coming out, even as it's being closed off. And it's closed off. And it says mimenu, which is from him. But it actually is the same word that we would use if we were saying from us. So this sense mimenu. So the sense in which things are closed is quite fundamental. We don't, it's he suddenly isn't able to reveal, so the sons don't know, and therefore we're also left with the sense of mystery. Let's keep going, and then hopefully we're going to get to a place where it'll be natural to for people to jump in with some thoughts. So, okay, so Rashi, the medieval commentator, actually gets this idea from Bereshit Rabbah, which is an early midrash on the Torah. So Bereshit Rabbah says very similarly, why is this section closed? And it actually points out that it's more closed than any other. There's no other parsha that's quite like this in the way that it begins. Says as soon as Jacob passed away, very similarly, right, the enslavement of Egypt over Israel began. So there's sort of a closing in order to suggest that sense of narrowness, that sense of the walls are closing in. That's what Mitzrayim, the word for Egypt, literally means, is that there's narrowing. That's what's going on. There's just a sense of constriction. As soon as Jacob passes away, the enslavement begins. Another reason, why is it closed? Because our father Jacob wished to reveal the end, and it was closed from him. And they actually add a different. Rashi kind of put these two together, but the suggestion is that someone or something, or God, or maybe he himself, Jacob, satam mimenu kol tzarot shebaolam. So this is again going back to that sort of creative reading from the previous text, that maybe there's actually a way that the closing is a result of the fact that maybe Jacob is maybe having some kind of a prophetic experience, we don't know, as he's passing away, and he actually wants certain things should not be known, certain things should not be revealed, especially because they're so distressing. And we're going to see actually maybe a counter text to this idea, but again, there's an idea that mipnei, right? We won't get too deep into the Hebrew for the sake of time this morning, but basically there's an idea that either the tzarot, the narrowness, the suffering in the world, shebaolam, is the reason for the closing, right? It's the narrowing in that's actually closing our perspective, and maybe even it's about the way that the consciousness of the people of Israel actually shifts when they're in Egypt. That it's actually because of the troubles and the narrowness that there's a closing, or that there's a closing that happens on account of the troubles and the narrowness, wanting to be, a little bit concealed, maybe out of maybe with a sort of gentle, positive intention. So now we're going to skip a little bit further ahead to Genesis 49, 1-3, which is actually where our community is going to begin reading this morning, when we read the Torah. So, could I get another volunteer potentially to look at these verses in English? Feel free to jump in.
I can read, Ben. It's Roberta.
Oh, Roberto, welcome. Good Shabbos. Sorry I didn't see you. Come on in.
And Jacob called his sons and said, "Come together that I may tell you what is to befall you in days to come. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob. Hearken to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and first fruit of my vigor, exceeding in rank and exceeding in honor."
Beautiful. Thank you, Roberta. So this is actually where the idea that Jacob wants to reveal something comes up. Why? Because he says, right, come together that I may tell you what is, and this is a very interesting translation. I want us to take a second to sort of take stock of how this translation decides to translate, because it's actually not so obvious. So first of all, what is to befall you in days to come is Asher Yikra. I'm over here on the right side of the screen. Asher Yikra etchem be'acharit hayamim. So a couple of strange things here. First of all, so acharit hayamim. This is the idea of so the rest of the sources that we've been looking at have been talking about a ketz, right? He wants to tell them what the ending is, what the ketz is. They're getting it from this idea of acharit hayamim. So acharit meaning like after, last, right? The absolute, what's behind all the days. And I would suggest potentially acharit hayamim. It could mean, I want to tell you, I'm on my deathbed. This is Jacob speaking. I want to tell you what happens, like when you're in the twilight days of your life, at the very end of your life. This is what it feels like. It could be as simple as that. But the tradition actually takes it to a much further degree to start discussing not only the situation in Egypt, as it's going to obviously play out for the people of Israel, but potentially all the way into the deep future that we ourselves haven't experienced yet. But there's another really strange piece that I want us to zero in on here. And that is this word, asher yikra etchem ba'acharit hayamin. So yikra here is translated as what is to befall you, what's going to happen. That would make sense if it was spelled with a hey at the end. Like in Israel, right? They say like makore, what's happening, what's up. So yikra with an aleph, you might know from like the book of Leviticus, vayikra, it's actually more about calling. And in modern Hebrew, we actually use the same root to refer to reading, likro. And in our liturgy, in our service, we talk about kriyat shema. When we recite the Shema, we're reading, we're crying out, we're doing a kriya, a kara of Shema. And that's there's something sort of, there's a poignant way in which those themes are actually available here in the text itself. So you might have noticed, if you're looking, this vayikra, this yikra here actually is doubled. This is the second time the verb is actually here as well. Yikra, right? Two karas with an aleph. And then in the next verse, two shimus. Shimu, listen, right? And we heard Roberta beautifully render this as hearken, right? Hear or listen to your father. So we have you can already see kriyat shema is actually built into these verses in a very subtle way, but in a way it's doubled. So there's extra emphasis, and it calls for some attention. And the last thing I'll just throw in before we jump into some midrash is that, so Rashi on this verse gets a little more specific about what happens, what is when it says that Jacob desires to do some revelation, which, by the way, we refer to Shema in the prayer service as like the period where we're talking about revelation, because it's a recitation of words from the Torah, which is revelation. So Kriyat Shema, the reading or recitation of the Shema, is really this connection to what is to be revealed. Rashi gets much more specific here, that when Jacob wants to reveal the end, right, et haketz acharit hayamim, what's being closed, just like we saw with the scribal closedness of the Parsha, what's happening when it gets closed is that it says the Shekhinah departed from him and began to speak of other things. And I included the third verse here about Reuven just to sort of prove that clearly he says, I want to tell you what's to befall you in the days to come. I want to tell you something about the future. And then he just starts, this is just one verse by way of example, but basically for the rest of the chapter, he's just going to talk about his sons, and it's not even so clear that they're even blessings. Some of them are actually quite harsh. It's almost like just all this truth starts coming out. So there is sort of a revelation going on. It's not necessarily future oriented. So the Midrash comes to say, he starts to talk about other things, dvarim acherim. So he wanted to talk about acharit hayamim, ends up talking about dvarim acherim. I want to just say, because of the acharit and the acherim, one means last, one means other. you could maybe say maybe this is what he intended, or maybe again there's some kind of Freudian way. I remember learning from Aviva Zornberg, brilliant Torah scholar, that this parsha is full of these kinds of unwitting revelations, that Jacob doesn't mean to say all this truth about his sons. It's not what he means to reveal. But of course, sometimes when we conceal, in our concealment, there's so much revelation that comes through. So with that, I want us now to sort of to see a few. I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna stop the share, and we've already absorbed a lot. So I want to see if there are any comments or if people want to jump in. What do you believe is being revealed? What are the what do you make of this? What's going on? I don't see any hands. So
I have a question.
Yeah, Bob, come on in.
So if there's no division between the parshas, what makes this a separate parsha? Why is it not part of the previous parsha?
Great. So that is all. That's all. So in general, with reading Torah, the way we read it is, even when it comes to the cantillation marks and even the vowels and the way we render many of the words, it's all oral tradition that's been, now it's been rendered in, we have printed versions of the text that show you all of these scribal traditions visually. But basically everything that we do with the Parshiot is just very old received tradition. So people apparently knew, and we still know today, that this is where you're supposed to finish one parsha and start reading the next one, but it's just not obvious from a visual point of view. So that's why a lot of these sources really pick up on that question of exactly what you're asking. How are we supposed to know? It's just a received tradition that people want to understand. Does that help? I know it's.
I know. I understand. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Okay, Asher Chaim, and then Harley, and then we'll keep going.
Something you said earlier was jarring in this COVID era. You asked if there is grace in concealing that bad things are about to happen.
Wow.
And if only that man had been a little more honest and told us that terrible things were going to happen, perhaps we could have braced ourselves. So I know every generation reads the words from a different place, but that just whacked me.
Absolutely. So, and as we're going to, thank you for that. And as we're going to see, I hope, and as I think I think a lot of us experienced over the past several years, so much truth actually is clarified when people are not honest. Right? When people are out there so obviously not telling the truth, in some ways, our response to that, and Asher Chaim, like I could hear it in your voice, there's something so morally clear about what's true and what's right that actually strangely comes through. And I don't mean that by way of apologetics at all to sort of explain away or make light of, but it's really this strange dynamic that sometimes when things are, the more concealed things are, the more our attention is somehow alerted to the fact that something is going on, that there's something true underneath this that I'm not getting. And I wonder if we'll continue to play with this theme in the background. But it is quite jarring. I hear you. So I'm going to jump to, so we'll do Harley and then Alana and then we'll keep going.
Thank you, and thank you for heading this. So I always saw this portion as a way for the later writers to sort of comment on how the story actually ends up. But in this reading, I see things a little differently based on kind of the way you were heading this, which was that the measure of a person's life isn't necessarily so much determined by the life that person led, however many different lives they may have had, but it's also determined by the lives that are led by the future generations of their family. And so that's a takeaway that I just hadn't had before.
So that's actually a beautiful transition. So I want to hold on to that idea of of that tension, that anxiety about how the end of one person's life is somehow heightens our sensitivity to the way in which their legacy then becomes a function of what actually happens after.
I knew you were going to go there.
So thank you for raising it and for knowing. Alana, go ahead, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, Boker Tov.
Boker Tov.
I was just thinking about this. Somewhere in the Talmud, there's a discussion about which is more that chokhmah, wisdom, is more important than prophecy. So I think about this moment where it seems like Jacob is yearning for the prophetic, and instead what happens is this kind of movement into wisdom, into chokhmah, to addressing his sons and witnessing them and naming it in a truthful way, some of the pathology and difficulty, but it's the stuff of wisdom, of embodied, even when he describes them each in their animal energies and
there's something very visceral about the way that he describes them, and it is true. There's something we may not actually have time to go all the way here, but there's some sources at the end of the source sheet that you can see in the link that was just posted that basically get to a little bit of contrasting actually Jacob with Joseph. Joseph, who is always the first one to say, don't worry, it's all, if anything seems unclear, it's just, like, we're okay, we're fine. And by the way, all that stuff that you guys did to me when you threw me in the pit and left me for dead, it's really not a big deal because I saved all these people's lives. And of course it was all for the good. And we often read that as sort of this, a symbol of Joseph's and him exhibiting his amazing faith and incredible, just sense of God's purpose and God's presence in his life. But there is some way in which he's very big on kind of sugarcoating things in a certain way, and he's almost too quick. He's the politician in the family. He's a little bit quick to not quite give voice to maybe some of the things that he's actually feeling. Even as we saw last week, that he breaks down in tears and can also be, so those feelings are made available to us in many ways. So that I thank you for that, and I think it is really instructive to be able to connect to Jacob's deathbed words about his sons with a certain kind of gentleness about what kind of reality is actually made available when that kind of sacred opening happens, and what really needs to be said in a deathbed context. So I saw Nehemiah, I saw your hand, and so let's take one comment from Nehemiah, and then we'll keep going. You're please, b'vakasha.
תודה רבה, שבת שלום וישר כוח. It's the first time I hear you דורש, and you're doing beautiful. So, according to Yehuda Levi, all of the lineage, all of them are transmitter of the Kabbalah. So I till recently understood that all of them became enlightened being, but it's not accurate. Abraham and Joseph became realized fully. Jacob, and the same thing for Isaac, he was realized, but he couldn't hold it. He lost it. And the hand is clear, it's not there. But the interesting thing is that even though he's not there, he's not fully there, he's still able to transmit the power, because the 12th tribe became 12 characters, 12 archetype, and still able to transmit the lineage of the Kabbalah earlier even to his son Joseph. So what I had to expand in my understanding is that somebody can be transmitter of the lineage without being fully in the state all the time, which usually my concept was that they have to be in the state all the time, because that's what I've seen with the people that I have observed leaving their body on the deathbed. Two of them realized they were in total peace and nothing of this kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, there's certainly a suggestion that Jacob is somehow, we obviously we relate to Jacob as somebody who does have prophetic experiences and is at a very high state of consciousness generally, but that, yeah, there's some way that the veil is lifting for him, and as many of us who have spent time with people at the end of their lives know, yeah, this is part of the experience very often, almost on a level that really can relate to other states of consciousness that we might associate with other spiritual practices, or even substances, and that this is that part of what goes on at the end of life is the thinning of the divisions between realms, and that maybe that's actually what's going on for Jacob. And as we jump back into the sources, just, yeah, keeping that idea with us that that he is trying to convey something that he's seeing from somewhere else, and then it gets closed off. What is that? What does that mean? And what is actually revealed in that? But in general, Nehemiah, I want to lift up that question of how this relates actually to sort of his conveying certain mystical truths to his sons, and what might be going on for him. So, because of where we are with time, I want to. We'll just look at. We'll just look at this Pesachim 56a. So this is actually from the Babylonian Talmud. And this is sort of a classic rendering this is the kind of core text from which all these ideas that Jacob is desiring to do some revelation on his deathbed. This is where it comes from, and you'll see that it actually relates very directly to our experience of revelation. Does anybody want to just jump into the English? Anybody want to read? I'd love to have a reader. Just for the English.
I'll read if I could. It's Carrie.
Perfect. Who is it? Sorry?
It's Carrie Fox.
Oh, awesome.
Can you hear me
Welcome.
okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
You're good to go. Hi, Carrie.
Thank you for giving me English. As Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said, that it is written, and Jacob called his sons and said, gather around, and I will tell you what will occur to you in the end of days. Jacob wanted to reveal to his sons when the complete redemption would arrive at the end of days, but the divine presence abandoned him, rendering him unable to prophecy. He said, perhaps the divine presence has abandoned me because heaven forfend one of my descendants is unfit, as was the case with my grandfather Abraham, from whom Ishmael emerged, and like my father Isaac, from whom Esau emerged. His son said to him, hear, Israel, our father, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. They said, just as there is only one God in your heart, so too there is only one in our hearts. And that moment, Jacob, our father, said in praise, blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and forever. And all his children were righteous.
So this is in some ways, very difficult. Thank you so much, Carrie. It's real kriya. I can feel that it's good. It's revelatory reading. So this is in some ways a difficult text. But also one that I think sort of is just as dramatically kind of amazing. So on the one hand, we see that, okay, so what's happening? So Jacob wants to reveal Ketz Hayamin, the end of what's going to happen at the end of days. So not just that they're going to eventually get out of Egypt, but really deep future stuff, total redemption stuff. And then the divine presence leaves him, right? It's closed off from him, as we've seen. And he actually has kind of a crisis of faith in that moment. Oh no, why is the Shekhinah departing from me? Why is my sense of divinity leaving? Maybe it's because there's something wrong here. Maybe, and this is where it gets kind of difficult. He's thinking about these previous generations in his family and how often there would be one brother who would be blessed and the other one who we kind of relate to, and certainly the rabbis of the Talmud relate to, as being associated with really kind of evil forces in the world. And he says, oh no, maybe it's actually not going to be the case that all of my descendants, just as was earlier alluded to already, that my legacy is actually tainted in some way. And then again, sort of ironically, so we might be holding that with some tension in our own hearts. You know, it doesn't feel great to feel like, again, this kind of demonization of the family isn't part of what's supposed to go on at this stage where we see reconciliation between siblings. That maybe some of that dualism, maybe some of that kind of in-group, out-group consciousness is transcended. That maybe we're seeing a little more of a sense that we're all family. And in a way, that's exactly how the brothers respond. Now, I don't want to totally, you know, I can't, you know, I don't want to de-problematize the question of sort of good and bad siblings. That's a definite theme here that's unavoidable. But how do the brothers respond in order to convey to their father that, you know, no matter who we are, no matter in all of our diversity, no matter all the stuff that we still maybe harbor about each other or for each other, they recite Shema. They testify to oneness. And this is the first, when I learned this the first time, this is the first time I had thought about this. When we hear the words Shema Yisrael, we can actually experience it as the sons saying to their father, Israel, Shema Yisrael, listen, Father, which again comes from our previous verses of chapter 49, verse 2. When he says, listen to me, they say, okay, well, now you're worried. Now just listen to us. You know, we're here. We're here for you, and we're actually part of this ongoing legacy. You don't have to worry. It's a really amazing use of the words. And how does he respond? Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, which are the words that we recite quietly or silently right after we say that line of Shema Yisrael. It's actually, in a very powerful way, this is putting into narrative form this essential way in which the Shema itself is a sort of death meditation. It's a preparation for oneness. And this is actually the way that it works in our tradition very often, insofar as it's connected with sort of last rites, you know, end of life confessional liturgy, as well as obviously at the end of the day, right? The bedtime Shema idea comes from this same tradition. And it's so powerful just to imagine, right? We usually put these words, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, in the mouth of Moses, because it's a line from Deuteronomy. But here we put the line in the mouths of the sons, and we put and when we say it, we can actually imagine ourselves talking to someone, telling them that this affirmation of faith is something that we actually share with them. I see some hands. I'm going to just keep going for well, you know what? Okay, let's take a couple of comments, and then I'm just going to, and then I'll give you a little Hasidic Torah on this, a little mystical interpretation of what's going on here to send us into services. So, Bob Schloss, go ahead.
I think the phrase "the Lord is one" has at least two direct interpretations. One is, all 12 of your sons, we all see God the same, even though we've had dramatically different life experiences, including one of the sons who's been in Egypt for decades. But the other direct interpretation of the Lord is one is the Lord that perceives you as you are alive is the same Lord that will protect you after you pass on.
Such an amazing framing of this idea of what is ultimately eternal. That's what I heard come through, Bob, in your words. There's just this great sense of, you know, when all bets are off, when all the idols that we, you know, wittingly or unwittingly invest our faith in throughout our lives, whatever definitions of success or things we may be attached to about ourselves or each other, the one thing that transcends all of it is that whatever that is, that source, however we relate to that. The idea that there is something actually that transcends all of those things and that maybe includes all of them as well on some level is really powerful. And that's the echad. That's what, yeah, you spoke beautifully to it. Roberta, did you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to really, I'm thinking so much of Yitzhak Buxbaum. I wrote in the chat, he was with me for Shiva when my father died about 20 years ago. And he shared a Torah. So it's so amazing that it's right from this Parsha, which I didn't know at the time. I really knew nothing about Judaism at the time. And that when your parent is in their transition, if you could be fully present with them, it's the closest that we can come in this body to seeing through the veils into the next lives. And that's, I don't know, maybe it's from this Parsha, but you know, here we are right after the Shiva of Yitzhak. And
yeah.
And just also want to say, I'm looking at the Fox translation, and he calls it the after time of days.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for this, Ben. Really powerful.
Thank you, Roberta. Yeah, and really thinking of Yitzhak, of course, for sure, as we move through all this, you know, all these legends, all these stories. Yeah, there really is this sense when you say this idea of being present with our loved ones at the end of life, there really is. I heard that. I noticed something when you said that, you know, here we see that Jacob is experiencing the divine presence leaving, and what comes in is the presence of his children, that they're able to sort of step in at that critical moment, that he's not alone. And maybe there's, you know, Shekhinah, there's divine presence in that presence that's even more immediate and more important on some level at that moment, since right he's gonna be with that other presence, you know, very soon. But this version of it can only happen now. It's the beginning and the ending. So okay, one more. I'm gonna share some Torah from the Sfat Emet that I hope is gonna send us into services with a little bit of with some kavanah for, I hope, especially as we prepare for Shema in particular. Okay. And I'm just going to kind of read us through it quickly and pick out some pieces that I hope can be instructive and edifying for us. Okay. So the Sfat Emet, Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger, is the Gerer Rebbe. He's late 1800s, very early 1900s Hasidic Rebbe of the Polish Hasidic school. So I'm just going to read through some of this. I may skip around a little bit. So he says he learned from his grandfather that our Parsha, Vayechi Yaakov, Jacob lived in the land of Egypt, is actually saying something really important, that you can live even in the land of Egypt. The Torah could have just said Jacob was in the land of Egypt for 17 years, but it says that he actually lived, meaning he was actually connected to the spiritual life force, which is so concealed in Egypt. He was even able to access it and really fully live even in the land of Egypt. What an amazing thing, the Gerer says. He knew that all of Egypt, in quotes, meaning all this narrowness, all of this constraint, all of this concealment, all of it is just this it's just hiddenness. It's God. It's the interior aliveness of divinity just underneath a lot of outer shells. And he connects this to what we've seen from Rashi, that Jacob wished to reveal the end, and meaning that Jacob really wanted to clarify this point. He really wanted his children to know that this exile, it just kind of seems to be bereft of God, but it isn't really. The inner strength, he calls it, that's underneath all of the hiddenness, all of the closedness of our parsha, right? This sense that things are closed. This is what he wants to reveal to his sons, just to make it super, super clear that underneath all of it is still divinity. But the Ger Rebbe says, but if this had been revealed, there would have been no exile at all. Because it would have made them feel, they would have known that everything they were experiencing wasn't really so bad. And then, right, and this, I'm thinking Asher Chaim of what you said earlier, you know, what if someone would just tell us the truth? It would actually maybe alleviate so much suffering. But this is a really difficult idea. So that God makes it impossible for Jacob to reveal this because it would have meant that there would have been no exile at all. What? Why wouldn't we want it to be easier? In any case, though, the Rebbe says, it is written in the Holy Zohar that Jacob revealed what he wanted to reveal, but in a hidden, secret way. Meaning that through faith, you can find the truth and make clear that it is just hiddenness. That is why Jacob lived is Vayechi Yaakov is a closed parsha. That's why our parsha begins with no break between the last parsha and this one. For the fact that this source of aliveness is to be found also in the land of Egypt, right? That reality, that truth is itself hidden. The idea that there is that the truth is underneath the hiddenness needs to itself be hidden. Why? The Gerer says, this reminds me of something my grandfather said in the name of the rabbi of Pshischa, I'm not sure which one it is. It's probably Simcha Bunam. That the reason why Jacob wanted to reveal the end is difficult. The solution is that when the end is known, the exile is easier. That's what we just saw. So if they had known that they weren't really in exile, or that exile isn't real, so to speak, it just would have gone a lot easier. He says, I only remember that much, but that's why Jacob wanted to reveal the end, to make it easier. He says, it seems similar to the previous explanation. Revealing the end means knowing that there is an end to exile. So if you know that there is an end, if somebody conveys to you, you know what, just meditate on the deep future, on the fact that you are not as wise as you've ever been or always will be right at this moment. This is going to change. This is going to end. That revelation actually ends the exile itself in some way because you know that it's going to end. And he says, again, this is this truth underneath the concealment, right? It's an account of the fact that it's just hidden. The exile has no strength in and of itself. It's just underneath it all. It's still God, like everything else. For the interior, the truth has no end, right? This is what Bob was teaching. The interior inner point, the ultimate divinity in everything, that is the only thing that has no end. So whenever someone talks about wanting to reveal the end, it means they're talking about something that isn't forever. And Jacob really, really wanted this to be revealed, but then there would have been no exile at all. And so it stayed closed. So our parsha stayed closed, and he wasn't able to reveal maybe what he really wanted to reveal. And in any case, through faith, the children of Israel believe that there's no strength without God, even if it is all hidden, even if you can't see it at all. Nevertheless, you can still come to see the truth through faith, right? And this is like, really like, it's coming from a certain kind of faithfulness that it may be hard for us to relate to in some ways even, but this is like the Hasidic Rebbe trying to give us some strength, for our belief in what's ultimate and what is really eternal. Jacob just wanted that there would be no mistake about this at all. He just wanted his sons deeply to know that this is not going to last forever. You're not going to be in Egypt forever. And even the enslavement that's going to come, it's not going to last forever. And that you haven't seen the end of the story yet. He wanted it all to be revealed, but it stayed closed. And the Sfat Emet ends with, we need to work hard to find this. So this is is in some ways a very, it's very difficult Torah, because it's basically saying that we actually have to work hard. That he's trying to explain the suffering in life by saying, there's something essential about working hard, about having to struggle, having to go through painful experiences. And without, with only 5 minutes left, without getting totally into all of that, the complexity of ever trying to explain the presence of suffering in our lives, which is really beyond any of us to, really explain or provide any explanation for. I want to offer for us this small paradoxical point that if Jacob had been allowed to reveal that this whole exile thing was not really exile, that it wouldn't have been exile. There's a paradox there in which, and the Sfat Emet is also pointing to this, that actually the only way to fully reveal what he wanted to reveal was for it to be concealed. The only way for us to fully get this teaching from him is for it to be so glaringly obvious that there is concealment, that there is closure, that there is closedness, and that the truth is hidden. If the truth isn't hidden, then we can't learn to look beyond hiddenness. It's really, really, again, I don't want to overly kind of rationalize or justify pain or suffering or concealment or lying, God forbid, deception. But there's an idea here that on some level, the more hidden something is, the more obviously in exile you are, the even more powerful the teaching is that behind everything is divinity, right? When divinity is more liminally hidden, right? If divinity is coming through really, really easily, and you're seeing that glow and that truth and that clarity, you might actually forget that, oh yeah, the times when God seems to not be around at all, when everything seems dark and terrible, that divinity is still available underneath all of that. It becomes much harder to learn that if you don't experience the concealment. And just to answer, David, I see this question in the chat. Was there an exile yet? It's just the idea that they've been exiled into Egypt. That the tribes are already living in Egypt. They're very far away from home. So even though they maybe don't really know what's to come in terms of how bad it's going to get before the people get out of Egypt, they're already feeling pretty uneasy. And as you can imagine, losing their father at this time, as they've just moved the whole apparatus into this totally new life, even if their brother is in power, it's full of all kinds of a feeling of being distant from everything they know and from truth, potentially. And I'll just offer just one more in our last 2 minutes. This, because we're learning this from the Sfat Emet, who's, his name, the name of his book, right? His name is Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger. His book is called the Sfat Emet, which means the language of truth. Safa means language or lip, literally. And Emet means truth. So as we think about this use of the Shema, as we think about this revelation through a certain kind of concealment that actually ends up popping through in this scene that we've explored together, something that's really available to us is that at the end of the Shema, right, we end actually with the word Emet. at the end of that third paragraph we're all going to do together in a few minutes, we come to the word emet. And something I like to think about is that the word emet actually has the first letter and the last letter of the alphabet with this mem in the middle, and the mem is the letter of the lips, right? The mem is the letter. When you make an M sound, you can really feel how there's all this meditative mumbling potential available to us. We can feel the vibrations. And it's also, by the way, a letter that closes the mouth, that conceals. There's some way that truth comes through when we just allow the truth to actually vibrate through us, through our bodies, and through that word, and knowing that there's going to be an opening. Emet. It's all in the end, right? The last letter of that alphabet is going to come, and there's going to be opening. So I hope it's 10 o'clock. We can take some of this with us. Yasher Koach, I thank you all so much for your Torah this morning. And as we let's just take a breath to let that in. And as we move into Shachri together, let's just take with us this idea that this morning is all about, we're closing up, right? Closing up 2020, closing up the book of Genesis. There's so much closing and hopefully so much opening that is going to come through that. That when there's concealment, this is actually the way that so often so much actually ends up becoming revealed for us. If you do have the source sheet, you'll notice that the last source on the sheet is from Abraham Joshua Heschel, basically saying that you're asking this question: so why is God hidden? Why is God hiding? And the Baal Shem Tov he quotes as answering, saying, obviously generations before, saying God's just playing hide and seek with us. God just wants us to play and to look for divinity everywhere. And God is hiding behind veils and behind, the word he uses is behind screens. So as you're putting on your prayer finalia, you can just feel that this screen in front of you, this is exactly what even the Baal Shem Tov hundreds of years ago in righteousness and in truth revealed to us, that even though we're not in person, this time of concealment, this time of only being able to access each other through screens, that is actually channeling so much truth into our lives, so much access to each other's divinity. And that's as much a prayer as a teaching. So let us all just say Amen and Yasher Koach, good Shabbos. Welcome to whatever comes next.
Yasher Koach. And as a transition, I'm going to sing the words of Heschel in Yiddish for you. Ich bin in Welt a Spur von dir, und jede Sach ist wie a Tier. La mich alle Spuren spüren, la mich alle Spuren spüren, durch alle Sachen gehen zu dir. Ich bin in Welt a Spur von dir, und jede Sache ist wie a Tier. La mich alle Spuren spüren, la mich alle Spuren spüren, durch alle Sachen gehen zu dir. We are a trace of you in this world, and everything is like a door. Let us trace that trace of you, and through all things, go to you. And we follow and we lead with soul. And this morning we invite all of you into into a little sweetness of soul, chanting and prayer. We're going to pray 3 prayers that bring the neshama. And the first one, the Moda'ani, the gratitude prayer that we sing every morning. Everybody, let's gratitude for the incredible Torah of opening us up. Beautiful Ben, this is your first, so a shehechiyanu to you. Everybody, a shehechiyanu and a gratitude for your amazing Torah. And a gratitude prayer for the fact that our souls return every morning because 1/60th of us disappears into the land of the unknown. So Shechazarta Binishmati, that our soul returns, is a big gratitude. And we have gratitude, the unseen parts of ourselves, the neshama parts of ourselves. We want to honor that this morning. The neshama, the unseen, the ephemeral, the liminal, the driving force of our spirits. So let's gather and breathe for a second. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla raba emunatecha. Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla raba emunatecha. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla raba emunatecha. 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 Thank you, 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 gratitude. Every bone, every cell, every blood that courses through my veins, we tune to your gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for my neshama, my soul, my breath. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla raba emunatecha. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Modani lefanecha ruach chai v'kayam. Shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla raba Soul moving from soul, the morning cry, the morning whisper. You are in me, What is it? It, you are life, vitality, prana, energy. Elohai, neshama, I give you words. You animate me. Elohai, neshama, shanatata biteho, rahi. 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 Ata virata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. You ensouled me, ve'ata neshamra b'kirbi. You watch inside, ata tid, litla mimeni, ulachsira mi, la'atid lavo Elohai neshama, shenatata b'teho, rahi. 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 Kozman sheneshama b'kirbi moda ani lefanecha, Adonai Elohai ve'Elohei avotai, Ribon kol ha'mahasid, Adon kol ha'nishamot, Elohai shema shenatata b'teho, rahi. 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 Elohai, 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 neshama, 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 shenata, shenata, shenatata b'teho, rahi. Elohai, 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 neshama, neshama, shenatata, shenatata b'teho, teho, teho, rahi, teho, rahi.
Just feeling that purity, that unrefined, clear spiritual truth inside of all of us. Let's just take a few breaths together. From these meditations on Jacob's deathbed to the 60th of death, as Chazon Basia taught, that sleep entails. Just noticing that this breathing, this breath has been carrying us also all night, while maybe a 60th of our souls was gone. just sustaining us. Holding us at this moment of truth. Just take a couple of minutes now. Feel yourself actually inhaling all of the residual 2020. Just taking a big, deep breath in, taking into yourself in from the world so much of the tension that's in it, and then breathing out into 2021 with just aliveness of breath, just replenishing that space in the world with love and with the reality of the divinity flowing through you in your breath. Just feeling the breath as a vehicle of that ultimate inner point of aliveness that is inside of everything and that needs us also to reveal it, to breathe it into the world. Just revealing, re-breathing. With every breath.
We breathe in the breath of all life, and our breath enlivens life, and life enlivens our breath. And in the soul sweet of Moda'ani Elohai Neshama Nishma Kol Chai, we celebrate and enliven ourselves with the breath of all life. Nishmat Kol Chai Tivarech et Shemcha Adonai Eloheinu. Nishmat Kol Chai Tivarech et Shemcha Adonai Eloheinu. Yai dai dai, 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 yai dai dai dai, ai 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 ai. Hi dai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai dai, hi dai, ai 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 ai, Ay, 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 ay. From one world, from one dimension, from one world, take me to another dimension. Oh, just take me. You who are my mouth, you who are my song, you who are my eyes, our hands, our feet. If only they could speak, my mouth, if only my feet were light as deer. If only, if only. מי ידמה לך ומי ישווה לך ומי יערוך לך האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ נעלך ונשבחך ונפארך ונברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד. בורכי נפשי את אדוני לכל קרבי Shem Kacho. Yah, breathe my soul out to you. Yah, breathe my soul out to you. All my inner pulses with you, you. Oh, Kiravai, Shem Kacho. ישרים תתרומם ובדברי צדיקים צדיקות תתברך תתברך. שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, ובלשון חסידים קדש תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתעלה שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו. We rise in the many ways we are able to rise, lifting our bodies up, moving forward in our seat, taking a breath, reaching up and out. Yishtabak Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. Our voices ring out. Hail HaMelech HaGadol v'HaKadosh b'shamayim uba'aretz. Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu. Shir Shvecha Halel v'Zimra Oz Memshela Netzach Gedola Ugvura. Teila b'Tiferet Kedusha u'Malchut. Blessings and thanks through all dimensions. Berachot vehodaot me'ata v'yad olam. Baruch ata Adonai El Melech Gadol batishbachot El hahodaot Adon haniflaot Habocher b'shirei zimra Melech elchei ha'olamim. And this breath of life, breath in Aramaic, a breath of our people. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'almadi v'achirotei v'yamlich malchotei. V'chayochon v'yameichon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala b'zman kari v'imro.
Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam u'lomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yidadar v'yidaleh v'yidalal shmei dekudesha berichu. Leila mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'yalma v'meru. Amen.
Amen. It almost sounds like a high holiday, my man. And in some ways, it feels like a high holiday. Amen.
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 Amen. Let's everybody just amen.
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 You know, sometimes amen feels really good. You can just say amen over and over again for a very long time.
Amen is it's almost like emet. It's got that same.
It's a coda.
Yeah.
It ends things. Like, what can you say after amen? You could say, welcome to all the new people at Romemu who are here for the very first time. That's a good segue.
Amen.
Amen. If you're here for the very first time at Romemu, please put your name in the chat. We'd love to welcome you. We'd love to say hello to you. We'd love to just find out where you're from. Please put in the chat. And sometimes there's nobody new. That's okay too. But if it's your first time, or even if it's your second time, please put your name in the chat so we can welcome you this Shabbat. And feel free to let's put ourselves in gallery mode. Let's say let's see who's like, just let's be in gallery community right now for a second. Really feels like something we need to do. Do I see anybody new? No, nothing's coming through.
You never step in the same river twice. We're all new.
Okay, well, welcome back. How about that? The chat's open. Elisheva Hervich is coming from Oakland and not a regular, so welcome to you, Elisheva. Elisheva, which is a very different version of the name. It's a beautiful version of the name. Welcome to you. Let's see, anything open? Anything else? Anybody else? And if not, we'll just re-welcome all of you again. Welcome back. Put your name if you have felt. Iva said that if you felt invisible, put your name in the chat. Or if you just need someone to say good Shabbos to you, you're like, I just really need that right now. You can do that. Because sometimes we just feel that like, whoa, I really like having my name. Yes, so great to dive into the well with you as well. In fact, we're going to do a little miniature deep dive well diving right now. Last night we weren't able to; we had a glitch. But we're going to spend a few minutes in a more intimate groupings, and we have a question that we'd like to send you out with in this grouping. The question is. Great, Michaela, right on top of it. What is ending right now for you and what is beginning? We're finishing chapters of Torah, of the year, of energetics, of winter. There's so much happening. What is ending? What is beginning to you? I'll see you on the other side of these breakout rooms.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Hope everybody's I hope there was breakthrough in the breakout rooms as we all move forward. And as in our group, we were talking about relieving, allowing certain habits and all kinds of things from this past year to be relieved of service in a kind way, no matter how hard they've been working for us and trying to help moving towards something more in line with what we believe and who we truly are. So I invite everyone now to rise in body, spirit, as you are able, as we move into the Barchu, gathered, taking that communal connection, that sense of connection, and that the buzz of all of the breakout rooms as they were all happening in parallel together with us. Ay, 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 ay. Nidididai, dai, dai, da, dai. Nidididai, dai, dai, da, dai, dai, dai. Ma, da, dai, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay. Baruch et Adonai. Ay, 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 ay. Amevorach. Ay, 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 ay.
Adonai, ha-ha-ha-mevorach, leolam vaed.
Di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di. Di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer or uvorei choshech Oseh shalom uvorei et hakol forming light creating darkness making peace creating all. Creating all who are beloved, all who are bright, all who are brave, kolam ovim, kolam berurim, kolam giborim. These bright ones saying your name. And the holy, holy I whisper, the holy cohorts that take us that accompany us each day. The light of the holy Baruch Kevod Adonai Bimkomo. To a new light with which to see with. Or Chadash al Tzion Tahir Nizkeh Kulanu Meheira Lioro. Or Chadash al Tzion Tahir Nizkeh Kulanu Meheira Lioro. Yair Yair na 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 na.
Now, as we prepare for Shema, just imagining Jacob, the patriarch of so much deception, such struggles with truth, saying to his children, gather yourselves, gather around, children, all from the fringes, come together as one. And hear this revelation, Mayikra. Hear this Mikra. We just move into these verses together and imagine, as some of us learned this morning, you can even imagine yourself saying it to someone, whether it's the archetype of Jacob himself or someone else who needs to hear right now. Don't worry. Your God is our God. It's all one. We are with you.
And sometimes love is not always praise. Sometimes love is rebuke. Sometimes love is unearthing the things that we try to hide. So love is a complicated mishmash stew. Ahava rabah havtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Ahava rabah havtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Chemla gedola v'teira chamat aleinu. Adonai Eloheinu. Chemla gedola v'teira. Yai 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 la la la. Yai 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 la. You keep such great love flowing, Mother, Father, Source. You teach us with your wisdom, with your rebuke, with your limits, with your fear assuaging. Open our hearts, you open our hearts, you open our hearts. Baruch atah. Let's gather in all the love from the four corners of the earth, with our fringes, with our edges, with our unevennesses, with our flaws, with our fears, with our abundant Shefa, channeled to the great source of flowing, overflowing love. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושינתם לבדיך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשבתך ובקומך וקשרת מאוד על ידיך והיו לטוטפות כעיני חופתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
והיה אם שמוע תשמעו. If you listen, you will hear. There's so much more Torah here than you even could imagine. I am giving it to you. It's going to be yours. You can own it. Hayom, today. In fact, the world needs you to bring it. I need you to bring it into the world. Bring me into the world so that we don't have to be separate, so that we don't have to worship anything else other than oneness. Pen yiftei levavchem v'sartem. Look at this beautiful earth I've given to you. It's a place where we can all live together, me too with you. If you'll just put these words on your heart, on your souls, and connect them as letters on a page, on your hands and between your eyes, and teach them. Oh, these days on this earth will be so heavenly when we all know. When we hear what Moses said. Just put little reminders all around your life. Just fill your life and even your clothes with little reminders on the wings of your garments. Make them pretty colors. Tchelet that captures the allness, the blueness, the oneness that everything points to. And just don't forget that the things that point to that oneness are not themselves exactly the oneness, and yet they are. They are. And we can leave Egypt together. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Feel that truth. Feel that truth taking you out of Egypt, even now while you're still in the narrowness.
Emet, emet the truth, emet b'yatziv, v'nachon v'kayam v'yashar v'neiman v'ahuv v'chabiv. Tehilot le'el elyon, baruch hu u'mevorach, ומשה ומרים בני ישראל לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך בעלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות עושה פלא נורא, תהילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה שבירכו גאולים, לשמך על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. And in all the many ways we stand in spirit and in body. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופדחי נאמך, יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני, צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Amen. Please rise if you are able as we move into the standing prayer from Sfat Hayam, from the banks of the sea, from the seashore, to opening Sfatai Tiftach, opening our lips with truth. Just feel that transparency from concealment to revelation. May we all be clear. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el, Hagadol, Hagibor vehanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chastei Avot, ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך. מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמנתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
יקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי הכתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה קדוש 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 האדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו אז בקורש אדיר וחזק משמיעו מתנשאים לעומת סרפים לעומתם ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומך מכד ותופיע תמלוך עלינו כי נחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב ימינו יעולם ועד תשכון תתקדש ותתקדש תוך ירושלים ירח לדור ודור ולנצח נצח וייננו תירנה מלכותך כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקו על ידי דוד משיח צדקו ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גדלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We invite you into silence. Like Yaakov gathering his kinderlach for a blessing. I invite all of you to gather the child inside. What part of you needs a blessing? Hold it, cherish it. If you have a little children around you, bring them with you, or a cat, or a dog. Let's do the priestly blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yoer Adonai panav elecha. Yichoneka yisa Adonai panav elecha. Yiselecha shalom. Yiselecha shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Yaselecha shalom. Yaselecha shalom. Yaselecha shalom. Kadosh Shalem. Yitkadav Yikadash Shemei Rabba. V'yamadi v'achirutei v'yamlich machutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael b'agalav azman karev yemiru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Liolam Liomei Omaya Yitbarach.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה
Brichu
לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו
Amen.
Amen. תתקבל צאתנו ובאתנו לכל בית ישראל קודם אבוהון דבישמיה ואימרו.
אמן.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו. אמן.
אמן.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yemeru.
Amen.
Amen. Let's everyone do a big amen because it's amen.
Amen, amen, amen.
Amen. We're going into Torah service with a Torah song. Lulei Torah Chasha Hashua Hazavaditi Leoni Lulei Torah Chasha Hashua Hazavaditi Shashua Zavadati Beoni Lulei Torah Shashua Zavadati Beoni. by Rabbi Mira Rivera to open us up even more. And a gratitude for the beautiful davening team this morning.
Our davening team, our galleries, our davening team, like Hakol, all of us. So welcome everyone. Is this a dream? Is it a beginning? Is it an ending? All I think is this, as we open into Vayechi, the last of our Sefer Bereshit, of the book of Genesis. And this is what is in my heart. Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding. No more falsehoods or derisions, golden living dreams of visions, mystic crystal revelation, and the mind's true liberation. A life that is almost at the end. Was it all a dream? Was it a profecía ociosa, an idle dream? So in this way, we enter this parasha, this Torah reading of Vayechi, with a life of Yaakov, our patriarch, that is ending. A life tied to so many lives. There was a robbery of Esau's birthright. There was a journey toward forgiveness way back in the beginning, a wrenching of the body in the process, a back and forth, Yaakov, yes, Yisrael, yes, Yaakov and Israel, and forgiveness. Euphemistically, this reading is called Vayechi, and he lived, but you and I know it is about the death of Yaakov. So how did Jacob live? How did Yaakov live? They said 17 years in the land of Egypt, so that the span of his life came to 147. We see that he lived Vayechi rather than he sojourned, rather than he traveled. Look, retirement. Right? Retirement should be about harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding. But in truth, his life was an up and a down. It was agony and ecstasy. It was estrangement, reconciliation. And we are namesake. And so you have past retirement. Yaakov now calls his sons, his children, and it says in the Torah, Vayikra Yaakov el banav. This is his way of saying, come gather around people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that soon you will be drenched to the bone if your time to you is worth saving. He says, come together, that I may tell you what is about to befall you in the days to come. Assemble, come close. Listen to Israel, your father. And Reuben, you my first and my vigor, you also unstable as the water. Accept that around you the waters have grown. So Ben, our scholar today in residence for Open Book, reminded us when we were studying this, that Vayikra, this calling, could be a chance calling, an encounter he chanced upon, but it could also be a bigger Vayikra, a call, a meeting by request. But to what? To an unnamed third person is crying, calling out to the end of days? Or in this beginning and ending that's sort of like a dream, it's not the end of days. It says acharit yamim. Is it the extreme end of the seas? Is it the future? Is it a ladder, a final outcome somewhere? Yaakov thinking, after I'm gone, my children, you and your children's children, you will be struggling. You will be called Bnei Yisrael. But perhaps, as a prophet would later prophesy, they will turn back and they will seek, they will look for the God of their ancestors. And it says, Hikabtsu b'shim'u b'nei Yaakov, listen, and then listen again. It's as if Shema Yisrael, it's as if God is talking. Is it God talking? This is very, very serious scripture here. Then a doubling, a yikra, yikra, shim'u, shim'u, speak, speak, hear, hear. The doubling. It's like if you didn't hear it the first time, come here again and receive this path which I have brought to you with all my imperfectionisms and my perfectionisms. So if it is you who is a child of Yaakov, daughter of Yaakov, son, daughter, progeny of this person whom we follow at the heels of, the line it is drawn, the curse it is cast, the slow one now will later be last, and the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading. Or is it really just the last and the end? Or is it, on the contrary, to give you and me a future and a hope, a tikva? Because Acharit Yamim means progeny also, and it also means progeny in the future and hope. So if for you there is hope, or you hope for hope, this first aliyah is your aliyah. Those of us who think of harmony and understanding, we gather and we stand to receive this first aliyah and to say the blessing. We unmute. No, we'll unmute later, but first let me bring this big kavod, big kavod to Chazan Suzanne Kachko, who has been voice of Torah for us for many weeks. Let us give her the kavod of bringing this, and then the next 2 and 3 aliyot will be ours. I invite Chazan Suzanne Kachko to bring on the first blessing.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu im kol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayomer Asfu ve'agida lachem et asher yikra etchem be'acharit hayamim. Hikabetzu v'shim'u b'nei Yaakov v'shim'u el Yisrael avichem. Reuven bechori ata kochi v'reshit oni yeter se'et v'yeter oz pachaz kamayim al totar ki alita b'mishkevei avicha oz chilalta yitzui ala. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, ve'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, ve'Leah, who Yivahu all, hakol, this holy community that says, no, it is not the end of days. It is the beyond the seas. It is just the beginning, and that these new days give us hope, redemption. On the contrary, we say it is hope and redemption. May we have a future that is full of light, that is full of clarity, that is full of this presence before you, behind you, and all around you. And we all say, walking together through our days. Venomar, Amen.
Amen. La la da da ya da 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 la da da ya da 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 da. I found myself listening to this song all week on repeat. It's very beautiful, beautiful riff. It's just over and over again. And it's a song by Manu Chao that I grew up with, like as my adult. And it's mentira la mentira, mentira las verdad. And I realized it's a song that talks about everything is a lie. Everything is a lie. Everything is a lie. Truth is a lie. Everything is a lie. And I found myself listening to this melody all week and really feeling like I want to let go of the lies. I want the lies to end. I want to live in a place where I understand that there's a truth. And when I read the second Aliyah, I feel like Yaakov is so deeply truth-telling his children. He's not sugarcoating anything. He's truth-telling his children. He's like, Shimon Levi, you were incited by your anger. You took this Hamas, this anger, this thing that wasn't yours. Apparently, according to Rashi, it was inherited from Esav. You took this anger and you couldn't contain yourself and you wiped up an entire nation. This is not what we stand for. When I grew up in Borough Park, ultra-Orthodox. And every time we came to the story of Shechem, to the idea that like Shimon and Levi, because they were angry, they wiped out entire Shechem. I couldn't stand it. I was like, how is this our Torah? How do we have a Torah that actually like watches an entire nation be stripped, like wiped out? And it's something that like, is part of my journey. And I love this next Aliyah because of the truth-telling that Yaakov says, your anger, you destroyed with your anger. This is not who we are. This is not what we stand for. I curse you. I curse this anger. And I think anger is such an incredibly destructive force in our lives, I think in all of our lives. And I think for this second Aliyah, I call up those of us who are really working at that moment where anger comes up for us, where anger is alive. And we know that moment that has such a destructive power. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with that anger and rechannel it, redirect it? It's the truth. The anger has so much destructive power. I just talked to someone recently. I said, why don't we start an anger journal? Like the second we're angry, just open up an anger journal, write it down, and then like take 3 breaths and see what happens. Just one idea. But this Aliyah, the second Aliyah is, and I want all of you to unmute yourselves who want to stand up for this Aliyah, for the truth, that understanding that being able to communicate truth is also a way of beginning a new path. If you tell someone the truth, you have an opportunity to try something different, to take a new way. But if you keep hiding, it's not going to happen. And for those of you who really want to work on anger and see where things can go if we find a new way with anger. So please unmute yourself. We're going to say the Baruch Hu together for the second Aliyah. Big breath first. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim natan lanu et torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Amen. Da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum.
Amen. Shimon v'Levi achim kelei Hamas mechedotehem. Shimon v'Levi are a pair. Instruments of violence are their weapons. Bisodam al tavo nafshi bikalam al techar kevodi ki ve'apam hargu ish virtonam ikru shor. My soul will not come to your council meetings. To your assemblies will not unite my honor, because with your anger you killed men, and with your self-will you maimed cattle. Arur apam ki oz ve'avartam ki kashata achal came bia'akol ve'apitzem be'Yisrael. Cursed is your anger so fierce, and your wrath because it is cruel. I will separate you within the lands of Jacob, and I will disperse you throughout Israel.
Everybody on mute still again. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Amen. Da 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 ba ba da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. Bless those who came up for this Torah. Stand with truth, to stand with unveiling the things that are making us paralyzed with anger and fear. Let's unleash those things. Let's work on our anger so that we can be a receptacle of blessings and we can turn those curses into openings and new beginnings. Da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da dee da 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 dee da da dee da da da. No more mentira, not la mentira. No, 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 es la verdad, la verdad, la verdad, la verdad, la 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 verdad, la 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 verdad, la 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 verdad, la 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 verdad.
So, amen. As we move to the third aliyah, the truth-telling continues. This aliyah is the verses of Jacob's blessing, truth-telling words to Judah. And first, I'm thinking about some of us in Open Book this morning learned from the Sfat Emet, Yehuda Leib, Alter of Ger. This is a lot of the themes that associate Judah, who is, of course, the namesake of Judaism, with lions, Yehuda Leib. This all comes from this aliyah. So the Gerer Rebbe, which also like Ger is somehow connected to this as well, even though it's just a city. The Sfat Emet is with us as we move to more truth-telling. And I'm thinking about in verse 11 here, Jacob says that Judah kibes bayayin levusho uvadam anavim suto, that Judah washes his garment in wine, his robe in blood of grapes. This is such powerful imagery that for me, really, when I think about the story of Judah, he's the brother who almost saves Joseph. He's so close. When they're about to kill Joseph, he speaks up and he says, "Guys, why should we kill our brother?" And there's this like deep breath, and then he says, "Let's just throw him in a pit and sell him into slavery. Like it'll be great. We don't have to kill him ourselves. Someone else will do away with him." And then later, when they eventually meet Joseph, Judah is the symbol of sort of the tshuva, of the repentance that all these brothers have to do, where he basically he shows real integrity and earnestness with Joseph. But this has been a long time coming of Judah being able to actually speak the truth. He had this intuition when they were about to kill their brother that this is not the right thing to do, and yet he was scared. He was scared to be honest. It feels like in some ways, the other side of the coin of anger, which, as we know, channels so much truth. Sometimes when we're trying to be honest, we also, we need, in that case, it's like not just to work on our anger, we need to work on our truth telling, on our honesty. And when I think about this verse about washing his garment in wine, his robe in blood of grapes, I'm reminded of how the brothers end up slaughtering this goat and covering Joseph's coat in blood and sort of pretending that he's dead. But it goes deeper because yayin, the word yayin, the rabbis of the Talmud tell us, our sages teach that the word yayin has the same numerical value as the word sod, as the word mystery. And they do it in this kind of tongue-in-cheek way, as to say, when you drink wine, the truth comes out. It's one way to do it. But they're also trying to, I think, help us think about what it means to actually access the deepest sod, the deepest, most mysterious secrets of truth that are really buried very deeply in reality very often. And that's why when it says that he launders his garment in the blood of grapes and wine, that word lavush for garment is exactly the same word that our whole mystical tradition uses for how everything comes into the world, veiled in a garment that allows God's light to come into the world through this kind of form of concealment. And so as we're dealing again with all these themes of truth telling, I want to invite everybody up for this aliyah who's currently searching for a way to sort of, as Chazan Basia articulated, translate this idea that even reality is in some way a lie. Everything is garmented. Everything is sewed. Like, even in order to get to the truth, you have to go through so many layers to move from even truth is a lie to that sense that the truth can be alive inside of its garments, that there's actually a truth that's abiding behind all of this concealment, and that all this concealment sometimes can be actually a vehicle for integrity and for revelation and truth, and not only symbol of lying and deception like it is for Judah when he presents his father with the Technicolor dream coat. So there's so much here, and I just want to invite everybody who is searching for truth and searching for ways to access truth and to feel that truth beyond the lies is a truth of aliveness. for the next Aliyah, summoning all of our courage to come up and to honor Torah this morning. So everyone, feel free to unmute for Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Chaya hamorechet le'olam va'ed Baruch atah asher nateinu ruach haolam asher bachar banu
Asher banu imor pa'amim ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך נותן התורה.
Amen. Yehuda, ata yotucha achecha, yadcha beorech oivecha, yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Gur aryeh Yehuda, miterev b'ni alita kara. Ravas karye uchlabimi yekimenu lo yasur shevet mihuda umechokek mi ben raglav ahad kiavo shilo velo yikahat amim. Osri la gefen iro v'lisrei kahabini atonochi beis b'yayin chi beis b'yayin lebusho uvedam anavim suto chachili einayim miyayin uleben shinayim mechala.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
ruach haolam asher natna lanu torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'neinu Baruch Adonai noten et haTorah.
Torat Emet, for all of those who have come to honor Torah this Shabbat, to honor the holy Shabbat itself, and to honor each other and this holy community. Mishaberach avotenu ve'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, ve'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, ve'Leah, hu hi tivarech, yivarech. May we all be blessed to, if we are those, as we are those who struggle with knowing that our garments and the garments of all reality are soaked in wine, or soaked in sod, or soaked in mystery, may we come to find the truth beyond all this seeming deception and true deception. May we just access the truth, and we ourselves find the courage to come to an orientation of honesty, to become the true vehicles of revelation that we were born to become in this world. And let us all say,
Amen. Chazak, chazak, v'nitzchazek, v'nitzchazek. Chazak, chazak, v'nitzchazek, v'nitzchazek. Let us be strong, strong, strong for each other, strong. strong, strong with each other. Strong, 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 strong with each other. Strong, 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 strong with each other. Strong, strong, strong for each other. The next Torah we do is Exodus next week. Wah!
Strong, strong for each other. That is our name. And a prayer for healing is not a prayer of weakness. A prayer for healing is a fist raised up to the sky to say, take care of us. Take care of us, my beloved. Take care of our beloved ones. Mishaberach, Mishaberach. We ask for healing. We ask for healing. El narefanala, el narefanala, el narefanala, refuah shlema. El narefanala, el narefanala, el narefanala. Refuah shlema. We share the names of our loved ones. We pray. May the Holy One, compassionate one, restore them to health and vigor. הוא יברך ורפא את החולים, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליו בקהילה קדושה. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם לחזיקם ולרפאותם, וישלח מהרה רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף. Please send them healing of body and spirit. בתוך שאר חולי ישראל, שבת היא מלזעוק ורפואה קרבה לבוא. Though Shabbat is a time to refrain from petitions, we pray that healing is at hand. Hashta ba'agala v'zman kari benomar. A resounding
Amen.
Amen. And another resounding prayer for those who care for our loved ones. We always pray for our healthcare workers, our teachers, our essential workers. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless them who care and risk their lives for the sick, for those who need healing, coming together, our healers, social workers, and clergy and teachers in prisons and in hospitals. They navigate unfolding dangers of the world each day to tend to those whom they've sworn to help. Ease their fear, sustain them, protect them and restore hope, and keep them in health that they may bring healing, and help them know that they will breathe. They can breathe without fear, and bless the sacred work of their hands. And may that vaccine get to them speedily, and may this plague pass from among us speedily and in our days. Amen. Etz Chaim Hi, we are this tree. We are sustained by Torah of life. We are sustained from the ground, sustained together in Torah. Etz Chaim Hi, lamachazikim ba, betomcheha meushar. דרכיה דרכי נועם, בכל נתיבותיך שלום. השיבנו לאדוני לך ונשובה. חדש renew, חדש ימינו כקדם.
We hope that you got more connected to your hearts. And if you still have not, this is a good chance to, because this prayer says, let's return to our hearts. And if you can, breathe into your heart.
V'hashevota, v'hashevota el levavecha, ki havaya, hi Elohim. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Never Haya Adonai Melech al kol haaretz bayom bayom bayomahu bayom bayom bayomahu yeh Adonai echad chad u'shemo Shemo Echad.
Ushemo, in your name. Echad. For a moment before we say the names of our loved ones, before we do our mourners Kaddish, a Kaddish for 2020. Collaborative prayer, collaborative yearning from Rabbi Lily Soloshek and our Kohenet Shamira, Sarah Chandler, rabbinical student Meyi, and rabbis Emily Cohen, Reish Wise, and Noam Lerman. What is a Kaddish for 2020? We cannot count the losses of 2020. We lament the deaths of 2020, 1.8 million from coronavirus, deaths of healthcare workers, incarcerated people in refugee camps, deaths from homelessness during this pandemic. We lament the deaths from police violence, deaths of Black and brown people, of trans people murdered for existing. We cannot count the losses of 2020. We mourn time lost from family and friends, canceled weddings, and funerals in isolation. We mourn the loss of in-person education for our children and the socioeconomic barriers to education during a pandemic. We mourn jobs lost, increased hunger and poverty, evictions, unpayable bills. We cannot count the losses of 2020. We cry and we cry out. We cry out against fascism, against white supremacy. We cry out for stolen indigenous land. We cry out for those voices that have been silenced. We cry out for the injustice of race, gender, socioeconomic class, location, determining how we experience this pandemic. We cannot count the losses of 2020. We grieve the damage humanity has done, inflicted on Earth. We grieve poisoned water, air, drought, and erosion. We cannot count the losses of 2020. We grapple with new phrases we've come to say daily. Unprecedented, new normal, pivot, unforeseen, abundance of caution, surreal, isolation, difficult, mute and unmute, technical difficulties, silver lining, streaming, quarantine, shelter in peace and lockdown, masks, misinformation. We cannot count the losses of 2020. So may the one who makes peace in the heavens give us courage and resilience to make peace amongst our communities, our nations, and our world. May the anguished learnings of this year lead to building better access for people in the margins. May the memory of this 2020 spark a revolution within us to build a stronger, more just, and loving world. May we know the privilege we hold by being alive as we say, Amen. And yes, for those whom we are mourning in this community, Yitzhak Buxbaum and Jean Roslyn Shore, Armando Manzanero, Marie-Louise Saint-Fleur, Jamie Brady Rifkin, MF Doom, Rabbi Raphael Goldstein and Shirley Gatzik and Grace Tan in Denmark and Sydney Lisbeth Schwartz. We mourn the passing of Robert Gerald Cohen, Jason Andrew Brodsky, Seymour Brodsky, Evelyn Goodman, Ellsworth Levine, Benjamin Wolf Tilashkin, and Rabbi Dr. Henry Dicker. We remember Mary Armstrong Mims and Lee Brox, Yigal Yoel, Sarah Melina Siegman, Stuart Fred Fate, Vera Goldman, and Ruthie Lev. We mourn the passing of Gabrielle Gottlieb, Felix Austin, and Mr. L.C. Floyd, and Arthur Siegel, Barry Grushkin, and Seth Lessenow, Gilda Koppelman Rieger, and Marian Goldstick. Beth Baldridge, we remember. Your memory will be for a blessing. Devorah Stoll, we remember. Lynn Blacker, and Myrna Feldman, Irene Weissmiller, Kim Wetzel, Susan Voloshiwensky, Arthur Adler, we remember you. If it is your custom to stand for Mourners Kaddish, please rise with us. In all the many ways we're able to rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra chirute, be'amlich malchute, bechayechon, uvyemechon, uvchayei dechol Beit Israel, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach, le'olam olalmei almaya, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal, shmei dekudesha, brichu le'ela, min kol birchata b'shirata, tush bechata b'nechemata da'amiran be'alma be'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu be'al kol Yisrael be'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu be'al kol Yisrael be'al kol yashvei tevel be'imru.
Amen. Amen. So many gratitudes this morning. So many gratitudes this morning. Thank you so much, Chazan, Suzanne Kachko, for your beautiful Torah reading, and Lauren David Opler for your beautiful Torah readings. Thank you so much, Ben Pearlstein, for your open book. It was stunning, and it's a Yesher Koach and a Shehechianu moment for you. And with this incredible Rabbi Mira Rivera, you're a treasure for your incredible Torah, for the way that you bring justice and purpose and connection to the outside outside world, and such care for this community and your Torah. Amen, amen. Thank you for your incredible, generous gifts. It's just astounding. And thank you for the community. And we also have our staff. We want to thank so much for this week in particular, Michaela, who is behind the scenes taking care of things that the unseen hand. It's sort of like the neshama of Zoom and the acharita. You don't see it, but it's happening. Justin Siegel and Michaela for your incredible behind the scenes strength and power to kind of guide us and move us along. And there are also announcements that we have now. I want to bring us.
First, thank you also to Chazan Basia for holding us all as a community and for bringing such generous and warm and clarifying and softening leadership. I know we're all feeling it and we're all saying it into our cameras through mute and unmuted, but thank you.
Everybody send the love to Hassan Basia. I'm not kidding. With her voice is cutting through so much of the static of this time. Heaven help me.
And let us bring us to the voices of the community events that are happening and that we need. They're coming. There are things. There's a film somewhere, and I think there's JCC Social Justice Film. It's happening January 14 to 18. Use Romemu for a discount. Mira, what's next?
Home-hosted Shabbat dinners, a big one. And we will be gathering, you will find your groups and find yourself to different themed conversations. There's conversations about social justice issues, about just hanging out, about Chassidut, about multi-faith initiatives. See you there.
And what's next?
Ooh, a new lifelong learning class for everybody. Israel Lit is starting January 7th with Professor Ronnie Scharfman and Rona Rogel. You can register for 1 month at a time for all 6 sessions. We're starting with The Drive by Yair Asulin, getting deeper into the literary and literal meaning of Israel Lit.
Shot and drash of Israel Lit.
Exactly.
And that community needs to be in support of our wider community with the incredible Daikin, who is spearheading the Romemu Community Kitchen with Mandala Cafe. It's twice a month. The next one is January 17th, 3 to 7, social action at romemu.com. Sign up. It's supposed to be an amazing connective tissue experience as well as generative for the community at large who is in need of food. Next. We need more Chesed volunteers, please, more. So please, there's a lot of need in the community right now. Please sign up.
And also for the community kitchen, if you can't be there physically, right, you can on the day of, because really we have to social distance and all that, please call to Leaflet and we welcome your donations. We're now feeding twice and eating and being in the community twice a month.
Amazing. And also, I don't know if there's a flyer for it, but the weekend of the 15th, 16th is the Martin Luther King weekend. Rabbi Mira is going to be leading a Martin Luther King Havdalah program. I'm going to be in support of that. So just stay tuned to that. We lift our cups of blessings. We talked about blessings a lot today, and into this cup of blessing is the power of our ability to bless ourselves with the truth and with love. And holding the truth and the love at the same time is something very complex and paradoxical often. But we put into this cup of blessing that blessing. And we say, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, v'lasot et HaShabbat, v'doratan berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti li'olam. Oti leolam v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם לברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם לברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. על כן בירך יום השבת ויקדשהו סברי חבריי.
לחיים לחיים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen, amen, amen.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa b'chefzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'yacharek tichlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu yeh v'tifara אחד יהיה שני להבשילו להחבירה בלי רשת בלי תכלת ולא האור המשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצוחב לי בעת צרה והוא ניסי אומן נוסי מן הכוסי ביום הקרב בידו אפקיד רוחי ויתישן והירה ועם רוחי קביעתי אדוני לי below Ira, don't be afraid. It's a narrow bridge, but the main thing is not to be afraid. It's a narrow bridge. Please unmute. Say good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.
Good
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat
Thank you. We'll hug to everyone.
Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Avi.
Shabbos. Hey, Avi.
Avi, we need you to read Torah.
Hey, Jamie. Jamie. Hi.
Gracia.
Gracias.
Thank you, Basra.
Hi. Petchko.
Rabbi Mira.
Roberta.
Lauren, Sandra, Nancy, Jonathan, Pastor, Iva, Sharon, Mara, Anna,
Abby.
I feel like we're unwrappable.
Alina.
Yay, Alina.
Alina.